Welcome, everyone, to Josh's Severe Weather. I'm a meteorologist in the Raleigh area. Appreciate you joining me on this Sunday. Happy weekend to everybody here. We are going to take a look at an increasing threat later today and especially tonight for severe weather down south. Once again, the same area that we had to deal with this last weekend. Unfortunately, a risk again tonight and maybe first part of tomorrow for portions of the deep south. But that's not the only thing to talk about here. We've got some other big weather changes coming. So I'm going to break everything down for you. And if you could, please subscribe to this channel and like the video, share with some friends of yours, especially those in the affected areas. That way we can get the word out here of this potential threat. So I'm going to share my screen with you all here, and we're going to just kind of walk you through what's going on. And I do want to start off here with what we're unfortunately concerned about here in the weather business. And that is the risk here for just a lot less data than what we are accustomed to getting due to the layoffs that have happened from up above, unfortunately, in government here. And, eventually, I think we're going to see this shift to where private companies take things over the way government's going. But again, that's not my call. I just want to bring this forward to everybody here just because it is concerning for those of us who are in the business here. And you can see that we're going to be missing some of these weather balloons that are launched a couple times a day because there's nobody staffed to be able to do that. So that's going to mean a little bit less weather data, unfortunately, to help us kind of figure out what's going to happen here with these upcoming outbreaks of severe weather and then winter forecasts as well. So fortunately, we do have some wonderful meteorologists that have done a great job through the severe weather season. This was last weekend, going back to last Friday, and you can see the Storm Prediction Center did a really good job of picking up on the pretty good risk of severe weather that started here Friday afternoon and Friday night. You can see almost all of our 100 tornadoes, it says 96, but now we're up to 100, occurred within the moderate or enhanced risk area. Only a couple of Southwest Arkansas did not. And you can see here, I'm going to pull up the following day so you all can see. This was the high risk. Whoops. Let me find that again here. The high risk day. And you can see again, we had multiple tornadoes during this outbreak. Pretty much all of those occurred in the severe weather area. Just a few late at night or early in the morning on Sunday last week that made it into the Carolinas. But that area was under the gun here for the following day as well. And then I'm going to take you on to last Monday here, or last Sunday. So about a week ago today. And we'll pull this up here. Sorry for this being so tricky. And this was upgraded to an enhanced risk, but you could see again, the area that was under the gun was pretty much forecast to be. So the Storm Prediction Center is doing a pretty good job considering that the data we have right now is not as much as what we're accustomed to. So anyway, let's move on and talk about what's going to happen this upcoming week. You can see from Zoom Earth, we do have pretty quiet weather across the east and the west, but another system getting ready to move into the northwest. All of our weather is across the central United States. Looking across the pond here, we do have a storm system affecting France and northern Spain. And as far as the tropics goes, right now, not super busy in the southern portion of the world here. We do have an invest to keep an eye on northwest of Australia and one to the southeast of the Philippines. But neither of these looks like they're going to be extremely concerning to us, at least for near-term development. Now, looking at the satellite image across the country, you can see where our main storm system is spinning across Minnesota. There's going to be cold air with this. So again, some snow expected along the track of this system. But as we look at the mid levels here, we can see things are getting busier in parts of Missouri and eventually Illinois. And south of this area with daytime heating, we are going to see another disturbance that is able to trigger some storms later in the afternoon and especially tonight. And you can kind of see here this moisture that is coming in out of the Pacific, linking up with the Gulf moisture here. And that is going to trigger some severe weather, unfortunately, as we head into the night tonight. Temperatures are surging ahead of this. It's getting moist. It's getting warm across Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Oklahoma. Temps in the 60s this morning. We even have 70s in deep South Texas, and it's warm across the Southwest. Not a lot of brutally cold air in place, but we do have some of that around the Great Lakes and the interior of the Northeast, and of course in the ski areas of the Rockies. But you can see temperatures are going to be rebounding today. Even though it's a chilly start here, we are already warmer than we were yesterday across Florida. In fact, Vero Beach had a record low yesterday morning in the upper 30s. Today, we're starting out near 60 degrees. So you can see the warm-up has begun, and that is a return of moisture coming in out of the Gulf. As we take a look here at our threat for hazards across the country, you can see for the most part, the east is very quiet. The south is very quiet. There is one thing I do want to draw your attention to. That is this area in pink here that's under a red flag warning. We've unfortunately had an elevated fire danger and fires going on in western North Carolina. That threat does continue to include the Carolinas today. It expands into southwestern portions of Virginia, eastern Tennessee, and we're going to have increasing wind, low moisture in place, low humidity. So unfortunately, anything that does start a fire is going to spread pretty quickly, it looks like. We also see that threat across the Central Plains, and we do have some wind advisories, but this is not the same repeat system that we had last weekend. This is not the same kind of dynamic system. The winds aren't as strong. The pressure is going to be higher. We are not looking at a repeat, but we are looking at another system that brings us some hazards, unfortunately. Up north, we do have winter weather advisories in purple here. You can see that on my legend below. And we do have winter storm warnings in pink over the Arrowhead of Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan as well. About where you would expect to see winter weather this time of the year. We wouldn't expect it in Oklahoma or Missouri or Arkansas. Minnesota, Wisconsin, yes, they still deal with winter up until about May typically. So we do want to take a look here at the outlook for severe weather, and it starts later today. Slight risk across the deep south from East Texas through northern Louisiana, southeastern Arkansas, much of central and northern Mississippi, western Tennessee, and even stretching into far northwest Alabama later on tonight. And if we break this down here, you can see that this is going to have a tornado threat with it, but it's nothing like what we dealt with last weekend. Doesn't mean we need to ignore it completely. A tornado at night in Mississippi is never a good thing. Same for Alabama, Arkansas. You can see there's a 5% area here from the Arklamis area to about Jackson and just northward here. That includes Yazoo City, Rolling Fork again. So the same areas that had to deal with this last weekend are going to at least have a risk for a few tornadoes. Do I think they're going to be strong tonight? Probably not. We're probably talking EF2s and below, but there have been places that have been hit by multiple tornadoes in the last year. I can't even imagine having my house get hit once and then hit again. We even saw an area where 2 tornadoes hit within 45 minutes of each other in Mississippi last weekend. So definitely something we don't want to ignore, but this is not going to be as high an outbreak risk as what we saw last week. There's also a threat for hail tonight. Again, northeast Texas all the way up to West Tennessee. We could even see hail back to about Round Rock, Texas, and places like College Station and even as far east as Birmingham and Tuscaloosa overnight. And there's also going to be a severe wind risk that actually extends a little bit farther north into southwest Indiana and southern Ohio, or Indiana and Illinois. Get back from vacation, I forget my states. Anyway, please forgive me for that. But yes, the lower Ohio Valley, so southern Illinois, southwest Indiana, western Kentucky, we do have a risk for some severe wind as we get into the late day and evening hours here tonight. Now, as we get into tomorrow, we are going to see this front dropping all the way down into the Gulf region here. So a marginal risk for severe weather with maybe a second wave that tries to reform along our boundary later in the day. That stretches from about Lafayette, Louisiana on eastward towards Tallahassee and even a little bit farther north into southwest Georgia. Not really a huge tornado threat. We can see there is a 2% area that includes South Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle, and even stretches into southwestern Georgia. But this threat will also include some hail and maybe some wind damage, and it's all the same area that has that risk for potential severe weather. And we may have some heavier storms all the way up into the Carolinas and into northeastern Florida and eastern Georgia as we get into the day tomorrow. But this is not looking like a repeat of what we had to deal with last week, fortunately, or even earlier this past week in Indiana and Illinois. This is just not the same setup. This is sinking southward here. We have a shift in where the storm track is. As we look ahead to next week, Tuesday, you can see the severe weather threat's pretty low. Wednesday and Thursday, we're not really looking at much to be concerned with. And for the time being, the Storm Prediction Center doesn't have a strong feeling that there's going to be a major outbreak of severe weather through next Sunday. It doesn't mean there's not going to be anything, but at this point, there's nothing that sticks out to us. Now, if we look at the computer learning models here, you can see here that the threat for tornadoes, according to them, is actually a little bit higher where the Storm Prediction Center is showing it here for tonight in northern Mississippi. But again, just anywhere in the area that's in the slight risk, you just need to be on your toes tonight. There's certainly a wind threat and a hail threat here. As we look ahead to tomorrow, you can see that there really is a very limited chance for severe weather. But if it happens, it's showing along the Gulf Coast, even back into eastern Texas, which, believe it or not, after last year, the Houston area has not issued a tornado warning yet this year. Let's hope that trend continues, but certainly has not been a very active start to the season. Now, that may change as we move along into the spring season here. Looking ahead to next week, this is Tuesday. We do have a limited threat for some severe weather across North Texas, parts of Florida. I'm sorry if this is a little small on your mobile device. I can blow it up, but we're going to miss some detail, unfortunately. But you can see it's not really going to be a great chance for that severe weather. And then looking ahead here into the future, you can see that the threat for severe weather doesn't just completely dissipate as the week goes on. In fact, we start to see an uptick again as we head towards next weekend. Now, the Storm Prediction Center not yet jumping on board because the level of certainty is not super high, but I do want to point out what next Saturday looks like here, just because I do think we may have something to watch again in the same spots: Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Western Arkansas, North Texas, and possibly spreading into the Ohio Valley and lower Great Lakes as well. So this is just something to keep on the radar right now. We're not going to hype it up at this point with the low confidence that I have in this happening, but it is something I think we do need to be watching in the coming days. So let's move along to what's going to happen here in the shorter range. This is the NAM model for today. You can see storms have already broken out. We've had a little bit of hail across western Missouri. And as the day wears on this morning, we're going to see these storms weakening some as they spread from Missouri over into Illinois and eventually Indiana as well. There's a cold part of this where we're going to see heavier rates of snow this afternoon and especially this evening in the upper Midwest. But looking farther south here with daytime heating coming from moisture return from the Gulf of America, we can see here that showers and storms do break out. And we start to see more organization of these around 10 o'clock Central, 11 Eastern here. So kind of stretching along and just ahead of our frontal boundary from Kentucky down to Texas, we are going to see some heavier cells that move in. And that's unfortunately when many of us are going to be asleep, getting rest for the upcoming work week here. But these storms are going to continue to advance southeastward here overnight tonight, moving into Alabama, maybe even northwestern Georgia here by about 4 or 5 in the morning. Even the tail end of this, we need to watch in Louisiana and Mississippi as well. On the northern side, we've got to deal with some lingering cold and some moisture that produces some light to moderate snow over the Great Lakes region, even a little bit of wintry mix over parts of central New York State and far northern portions of Pennsylvania up here in Napa and the higher elevations here overnight into tomorrow morning. Looks like primarily rain for the East Coast here tomorrow. We're just going to see rain and a few leftover storms from this complex that moves through tomorrow morning to about lunchtime, eastern Georgia, moving through the Carolinas and the mid-Atlantic, the Delmarva area here and into the northeast as well. Some snow in Maine, so we could see some accumulation coming in later tomorrow morning into tomorrow night. But looking for the threat for severe weather to regenerate here, it's going to be fairly limited on the tail end of this front if you believe the NAM model. There's going to be a pretty low chance that there is even a tornado out of this, but maybe some hail, maybe a strong wind gust, something we need to still be watching in places like Albany, Georgia, Dothan, Alabama, Crestview, Florida, maybe even back to places like Metairie and New Iberia here in Louisiana. And then that spreads away and the chillier air replaces it here. We have some light snow chances across the Great Lakes and even near the Chicagoland area as well. Looking at the potential for tornadoes, though, it does start to come up here as wind shear increases here later today. Not a high chance. Oops, sorry about that. Not a high chance, but something we need to be watching here. This is 3 o'clock Central. And as we get into the evening, we actually see this increasing a little bit more over the Mississippi Delta region, which for some reason just loves to be under the gun here with tornadoes. I don't know why, but it is in a spot that is favorable for tornadoes due to the jet stream dropping south, due to the increase in moisture coming up from the Gulf of America, and just a favored spot here. So the risk, according to this, is actually higher in the afternoon because the shear is higher, but it's going to take a while to get storms to pop up. So I would say that risk is not really tapped into yet until we get towards the nighttime hour. So 7, 8, 9 o'clock, as I look a little bit closer to show you here, that's when our chance for tornadoes is going to be at its greatest, kind of in this section right in here. So just east of Shreveport, Bossier City to places like Ruston and Bastrop, Louisiana, Yazoo City, Greenwood, Mississippi, all the way up to maybe Tupelo and Oxford, and possibly even sneaking up into West Tennessee here. This is 8 o'clock Eastern tonight, 7 o'clock Central. We still have a chance, although it's more limited after midnight. And then, still keep an eye on things here in Louisiana and southern Mississippi. Jackson, you're not out of the woods here by any risk. So 3, 4 in the morning, we need to be watching in Jackson. And then tomorrow, you can see the risk for tornadoes is quite a bit limited compared to what we're dealing with here tonight. Here's a look at the HER model showing you the timing and location of these cells here. And you can see We get a bit of a break here, and then storms start to fire up across Arkansas, Western Tennessee, Western Kentucky, and even some stuff down in Louisiana, Mississippi. We need to keep a closer eye on here. This is just after midnight tonight, about 1 a.m. And then obviously this is all going to push south and east. I am going to zoom in and kind of give you a little bit more of a state by state, a more localized forecast. We're going to start with Arkansas here real quick. Watch a few of these cells coming through east of Jonesboro late this afternoon, and then spreading into southern portions of Arkansas, Pine Bluff, maybe all the way over to Greenville, Mississippi. So we do have to watch this area here this evening at about 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. There will be some potential hail. There's a bit of a tornado risk as well that we need to watch. In fact, if I pull up kind of a model sounding just to give you all an idea, you can see it's kind of marginal, but there is wind shear in the lower portion of the atmosphere here. This is a lot lower than the wind shear we had to deal with last weekend, Friday night and Saturday. But it is certainly enough to support a tornado, just a lot more marginal risk at this point. So just something we're going to have to keep an eye on here as I spread this on to the east into Alabama and Mississippi, or not spread, but shift. You're going to see the risk for storms later this afternoon. It does start to pick up some down here, but I think towards evening, right around dark, is when we've got to be a little bit more concerned. If you're in places like Natchez, Mississippi, or Vidalia, we do have obviously increased wind shear here and the potential for a few tornadoes. So something we're going to have to watch for a little bit more closely here right around dusk tonight. And then another line that spreads through northern Mississippi, the Delta area, and eventually shifts south and east. Doesn't even get to Jackson, Mississippi till 1 or 2 in the morning, but this extends over the I-20 corridor all the way to Birmingham and up the 59 corridor all the way to Gadsden, Alabama here, and then eventually shifts south. And we see stuff dying off by tomorrow morning, and then maybe a resurgence of storms near the Gulf Coast, which is very limited at this point. So that's what we're going to be tracking here. Do want to show you what's coming beyond this system. You can see it kind of moves into Florida and dissipates some. We get a few more storms in Florida on Tuesday morning in South Florida, but again, not a very big threat for severe weather. It's a chillier look to next week by midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You see a big high that drops down into the eastern U.S. This is going to lead to another outbreak of some chill. And then we start to see moisture return here in South Texas and eastern New Mexico. And this area really does need the rain. So this will be beneficial when it comes to that. But I do think we are going to have to be a little bit concerned with some heavy rain and maybe a little bit of severe weather as well. Before this hits, it's going to be a warm stretch of weather in the western U.S. with record warmth possible across the interior of the West here, Tuesday into Wednesday. But then we see a more progressive storm pattern starting to take shape by the end of next week. And as a result, we go from a heat wave back to mountain snow here by Friday across the Northwest. We see return moisture coming up through Texas towards DFW. And as we get to next weekend, this is Saturday, this is Sunday. Again, we need to be on our toes for potential outbreak of severe weather, but it doesn't look at this point to be a repeat of last weekend. Doesn't mean we ignore it. Certainly it could trend in that direction, but at this point, we're not as concerned for a major outbreak of severe weather, but there will definitely be some of that. And then as we head into April, again, the weather is going to stretch into much of the central part of the country where we see more active weather and maybe a bigger outbreak coming the following week. And I don't know why it loves to target Fridays and Saturdays, but that is kind of how the pattern has shaped up at this point. I do want to show you, this is going to confuse a lot of folks, so I'm going to actually educate you on this, but this is what's called the Madden-Julian oscillation. And this was the Europeans' forecast from a week ago. And you saw down here when we were right at the edge of phases 2 and 3, a very active stretch of weather over the central and southern United States. You can see, though, we have shifted back up towards phases 5 and 6, which is definitely going to be less active down south for big outbreaks of severe weather. Doesn't mean there can't be any, but this allows some cooler weather to come on down. And as we take a look here at the current forecast, you can see we don't go back into that very active phase. In fact, we go into a little bit more of a neutral phase. So this means the amount of severe weather expected over the next couple of weeks should not be as extensive as what we had to deal with last week. Could there be stronger tornadoes at this point? Certainly, but I don't think we're going to see 100 tornado plus outbreaks in one day in this kind of a phase of 5 and then heading into phase 6 here this weekend. And then next week we head towards 7 and maybe more into a null phase, which is more neutral, meaning not nearly as chaotic weather. In fact, we may be stuck down in that null phase heading right through the first few weeks of April up to about Easter Sunday. So we're going to keep an eye on it. Of course, this is just a forecast. It could shift, but no major intrusions of brutally cold air coming. There will certainly be some cold, as the Arctic Oscillation is not exactly way positive. It is coming up a little bit, though. The Eastern Pacific Oscillation goes negative, though, next week, meaning we do have some colder weather moving in from the Pacific into the western U.S. Eventually, that shifts east. Looking at the Western Pacific Oscillation, that's even more negative. So we are going to have our share of storms coming in with colder weather heading into April. Looking at the Pacific North American Oscillation, slightly positive right now, then going more to a neutral and negative phase. So again, a lot of back and forth here at this point. And then the North Atlantic Oscillation, which when it's positive, typically means there's less of a block where the cold air gets stuck in the Northeast. So it is somewhat progressive here, but we do have possibilities for it to try to go negative again in April, meaning more cold outbreaks are still possible at that point. Looking at the upper level pattern real fast, and I'm going to wrap this up for everybody here. You can see ridge of high pressure builds in here aloft. Then we start to see a more active pattern in the west again by the weekend. But it is going to warm back up in the east here for the first weekend of April. But then we get to see more active weather, a lot of back and forth here. You can see when the warmth and the cold are next to each other, we typically have outbreaks of severe weather and high winds to deal with. So we are going to see more active weather again as we move into the month of April. As far as temperature forecasts go, it's warm in the west for a few days. Then we start to finally warm up in the east towards the first full week of April. Then we start to head back into a colder pattern. So a lot of back and forth here the first few weeks of the month of April here. And you can see it gets cold again in the west. So we are going to see some records set on both sides of the spectrum here. Probably some record warmth early in April in the central U.S., and then maybe some record chill in the west by the second week, and possibly a few record lows later in the month of April, which could impact and slow down the growing season across the eastern portion of the United States. As far as precipitation goes, it does look pretty dry across the eastern United States right through next week. Unfortunately, that's not going to be good for the wildfires we have in the southeast. But we do see some hope coming beyond that in early April. It gets very wet in Texas and the Mississippi Valley. That unfortunately could include severe weather. And we start to turn wetter here by about the weekend after next across the eastern United States, and then just some back and forth beyond that. I do want to show you real quick here. The potential for supercells here is going to grow again starting next weekend, and really starting Friday of this upcoming week in Oklahoma and Texas and spreading east. So there will definitely be some potential again to see some severe weather. And I do think the Storm Prediction Center has certainly a window here to show us some longer range potential, at least 15%, as we head into Friday and Saturday of next weekend once again. It's like you set your clock for Friday and you know there's going to be severe weather. I know that's not good for folks that are traveling. So we do need to be concerned with that. Let me actually show you the graphic here. I just talked about it for 20 seconds. But yes, definitely some concern again for severe weather across Texas and Oklahoma on Friday, spreading into Arkansas, Louisiana, maybe the Mississippi Valley by next weekend. So every 6 or 7 days, we have the risk for severe weather once again. So we're going to take a closer look at that later in the upcoming week. I've just gotten back from vacation. I'm highly caffeinated. I'm talking a lot. Just wanted to kind of spill the beans here on what's going to happen tonight and tomorrow before we look at this next period of more active weather coming. And I will have more videos in the upcoming week breaking that down once confidence in the forecast starts to climb. So I appreciate everybody's time today. I do want to leave you all with a word of encouragement. I am a Christian man, and I think that just truly governs what I do every day. I think a lot of people who go on TV, their mission is to save lives, and I truly have that mission as well. But first and foremost, my mission is to spread the good news that the Lord has given us through the gospel, through the holy word. And Second Chronicles, Old Testament 7:14 says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. And this is truly one that I think smacked me in the face. Being humble is not something I grew up being. In fact, I was kind of a self-centered person, just to be honest with you all. But when I did become a Christian 12 years ago now, I learned that humility and repentance and turning to God and seeking his wisdom will help me turn away from the wickedness that the world provides us and allows me to have that gateway to heaven. And I pray that that's what you have as well, that relationship where you can humble yourself, turn to the Lord, and allow him to forgive you of your sins so that one day you are completely healed from that difficult life and given the ability to be sinless and live a perfect eternal life in heaven. So I wanted to leave you with that good news because that is, I think, what guides me every day, and I pray that it does for you as well. But I just know that um, there's a lot more waiting for us eternally, and there is goodness surely in the land that we can inherit, and that gift is given to us. So, just wanted to leave you with that word encouragement, and I pray that everybody has a wonderful Sunday. And I will catch up with you all again soon. Please be safe. Please take all warnings tonight seriously, and I will be back soon. God bless you.